Hi! Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Awkwardly Social, guys, where we talk all things true crime. What's the other thing? History. Yes, true crime, history, and movies, and anything that I really just think of doing at any given time. So yeah, that's what we do here. My name is Precious. I am the one doing the stories. So yeah, welcome to my channel, guys. So my phone cut off in the middle of my intro, so continuing on from my intro, we're doing Crime and Time, guys, where we tell true crime stories or history stories. Today we're doing history story, a very sad, tragic history story. I can't say history quickly. History story. Yeah. Today's story is a little bit more serious, a bit more solemn, a bit sad. Yeah. So today we're gonna talk about a young woman who was displayed. I should close my. I'm sitting next to my window, and there's like a road right next to. Let me close that. Okay. So yeah, a young woman who was displayed as a human display for people to come and view because of her unique body features that Europeans were very fascinated by. Her name was Sarah Baartman. I'm pronouncing it like that because it's South African pronunciation, so it's Baartman, Sarah Baartman. Yeah, it's a very tragic story. I won't lie to you. It really, I was emotional while researching it, and I'm probably gonna be just as affected when I'm telling the story. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the video. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below about what you think about the video, the story. Okay, so let's begin the story. So the story takes place in the late 1700s to 1800s in South Africa and Europe, those two places. It starts here in South Africa because I'm here in South Africa. So it starts in South Africa in around the 1700s, where if you know the history, I'll give you a quick context as to what was happening around that time in the country. So the Dutch from Europe had come down and colonized southern Africa. They had a colony on the Cape, the southernmost Cape of South Africa. It used to be called the Cape of Good Hope, but now it's called Cape Town. So that's the first colony that they had. And then as time went on, they decided to expand and invade inland, basically, and take more land and natural resources. However, the land was not empty. It had inhabitants in it. There were native people that lived on those lands that they confiscated, basically. So we had the San people and the Khoi people who lived on the Eastern Cape, which is a province that is slightly more inland than the Eastern Cape or the Cape Town where the colonies were. So they expanded into the Eastern Cape as time went on, and decided to encroach on the lands of the San and Khoi people. And that's the context within which this story takes place. So because of the invasion of these lands, there was a lot of conflict between the native people and the colonialists. There was a lot of conflict there. There were a lot of killings going on, land grabs. People, the natives used to get killed to just so they could take their land. And if they weren't killed, they would be enslaved. So it was a very volatile time for the native people of the land at that time. And so Sarah Baartman was born into that world. She was born in the Eastern Cape in 1789. She was the only child of her parents. her parents were servants of a Dutch farm, or a colonialist farm, because at that time, like there was just so much going on. So she was born there, and then at a young age, both her parents died. From what I've read, I couldn't quite tell. I didn't get exactly how her parents died, but they wrote that their parents both died before she was like 10 years old. So both her parents died, and she, because of the time that she lived in, and because she was alone basically at the time, she didn't have any other siblings, she didn't have anyone, so she was left an orphan in the middle of a very dangerous world. And she was also a female, and in that time period where as a woman you had absolutely no rights, like especially if you had no parents, no husband, nothing, you were completely vulnerable and defenseless. So as such, the only thing that she could do at the time, even though she was like very young, like probably preteen to like adolescent age, she was very young. She had already lost her parents. She was all alone. The only thing she could do at the time was to find a husband. So sis went out there. She found a husband, a young koi man, a young man, because they were around the same age. And he was a drummer, actually, which is like so cute. I don't know why I think that was, because everyone else was working as like servants, farmers, and then he's just like a drummer. So I don't know. I just thought that was really cute. So yeah, she got married to the drummer kid, and then she had some security for a little while in the marriage, and she got pregnant as well around the same time. She got pregnant. Isn't it so weird that when you think about history compared to now, you're like 13-year-old kids getting married and being pregnant? In this day and age, that would be incredibly problematic. But when you think about it, like it was the 1700s, so it was probably the most normal thing ever, even though it's a bit cringe now when you think about it. So yeah, they were both very young. She got pregnant, but unfortunately they lost the baby after birth. So sis had lost her parents and her first ever baby. So it's just like I said, the story it's just sad. And it keeps getting worse. That's the thing. It just keeps getting more and more sad and more tragic. So unfortunately, if you think it's bad, it's always gonna get even worse. So whatever is worse than bad, expect that, because that's it's the story, man. So where am I? So because of the conflict that was going on at the time, people were battling, people were getting killed all the time. Unfortunately, I keep saying that word, unfortunately, I'm gonna say it a lot, so maybe you should do it as a drinking game. Drink every time I say unfortunately. You will die though, so maybe you shouldn't do that. But yeah, unfortunately, her husband was murdered during the fights and the raids and all that. He was murdered by the Dutch, and so again she was left alone to fend for herself and completely defenseless. And so she ended up being abducted and enslaved by a man called Peter Caesar. Peter Caesar. So he was a trader, a Dutch trader, who abducted her, enslaved her, and then sent her to go be a servant to his brother Hendrik Caesar. So remember those two, because they're very important characters here. So she went to work for Hendrik Caesar, who is one of the two main villains. Just great guy. The kind of guy, salt of the earth type of guy. Yeah, and then one day an English guy called William Dunlop decided to come down to SA, see what's going on down here. So he decided to come on a ship. He was like a surgeon or something. So he decided to come see. He was friends with the Caesar brothers. So he came to see them. And as he saw them, he met Sarah. If you all know, side note, which not really side note because it's important, Sarah had a condition called steatopygia, which means that she had a significantly big bum, big butt, big buttocks, very, very big buttocks. Like you could clearly see that it was big. So everyone who saw her, especially the white folks, were completely shocked. They were like, how can anyone look like that? Like, how does she look like that? That's mind-blowing. So they were all mind-blown every time they saw her. And of course, my man William Dunlop was also mind-blown when he saw her. And he thought, oh my gosh, like light bulb moment. This is amazing. She would be a great specimen to display to Europeans. Like, plus Europeans already think like brown people, dark people are, lesser humans, a lesser race. They already think they're superior. So they would absolutely eat this up. They would love to see a black girl with this kind of body type, because I'm sure they've never seen such things before. So this would be amazing for me and for you, the Caesar brothers. We could make a ton of money from like displaying her in Europe. Like, what do you think? Of course, the Caesar brothers loved it. They loved the idea because they were also like going through some financial issues. So they loved it. They were like, yeah, like, wow, let's do this. Why didn't we think of this? So they decided to do that. And then in 1810, that's when the whole thing really started. So they decided they're going to take her to good old Europe, England specifically, to go and display her, because like, who wouldn't want to see this black girl with a big bum, right? Oh, I'm back, guys. My light just died. I had to put it back on. So yeah, in order to be able to take her to London for the display, they had to draw up a contract, supposedly draw up a contract stipulating that she would basically allow them to do that, However, so in the contract was supposed to say, or it did say, that she would go to England to be displayed for entertainment purposes, and that she would earn a little bit of money from doing that, and that after 5 years of doing that, she would be allowed to come back home and continue her life back home. So that's what was in the contract. However, the signing of the contract is dubious, because one, Sarah was a koi girl, so she was illiterate, which means she couldn't read and write and stuff like that. So how did she sign a freaking contract written in English? How did she understand any of what was in there? Two, she was their slave. She was the slave to the Caesar brothers. So how do we know she wasn't just forced to sign it, or they maybe even forged the signature? We don't actually know. So the whole thing is very sus. The contract is very sus. We don't know. So it's a sus thing to begin with. So because of the contract, they were like, yep, let's go. They took it to Europe, to London. They got there. They were like, we need to find a place to display her where, everybody can go and see, and spread word of mouth all over the place so we can make the most money. So of course, they decided on Piccadilly Street, which was a street in London where they would display like, just odd things they would collect all around the world. If pirates came in from like Jamaica with some freaky thing, they would put it there and display it. It was sort of like an animal display more than anything. So of course, why not put a human girl amongst those things, Just great. So they decided to put her there in a cage, half naked, for the English people to come and view and to see and, be entertained and amused, of course, by this, this unique black girl who looks different and all that. So, to them, she was like a rare animal they had never seen. So yeah, she was displayed there in a cage. Apparently the cage was about like 1.5 meters tall, which is my height. And I'm pretty small. 1.5 meters is small. So I don't know how tall she was, but I can imagine, even for me, that cage would be small, because I would literally be right on the top of it. So imagine being stuck there, half naked, people watching you, probably like poking you through the cage and touching you and stuff, and you're next to like animals and other things. And plus, she was half naked in London. The weather, you all know the weather in England is not the greatest. They have like 2 days of summer in the whole year. So it's always raining, it's always cold. And she was half naked the whole time. So just imagine the horror this girl had to endure. Absolute horror. Fortunately, it just gets worse and worse and worse. It never stops, So yeah, she was displayed there for a while. They made a ton of money, they were like, yeah, let's keep going, let's get more people involved. People loved it. People were like, oh my gosh, what is this creature of a, what is this species? Is she human or what? Like, wow, what kind of bodies? Like people were just loving it. They were just loving it in London, just treating her like an absolute like exotic animal or something. So after a while, in Europe, there were some anti-slavery abolitionist organizations that were rising up in Europe who saw all of this, and they were like, what the what is going on? Like, why are you displaying a full human being alongside animals as if she's subhuman, or she's some sort of specimen or creature and not a human being? It's like, this is archaic behavior, this is barbaric. So they decided to take Hendrik, Caesar and Dunlop. They decided to take them to court and sue them to basically release Sarah to go back home and free her. Unfortunately, in the court case was lost because, one, there was the contract that she supposedly signed, which was sus. Two, she had to make a testimony in the court, basically saying whether or not she was doing this by her own free will, which is also, again, very suspicious, because she had to do the testimony with them in the room, with the two captors, with her captors there in the room, which I'm guessing she was afraid of them and didn't want to, say anything to go against them. So she probably just said what they wanted her to say. And so she said, no, I'm okay. I'm not kept against my will. It's okay. You don't have to worry about me. And, because of that, the court case was dismissed. However, the court decided to change up the contract a little bit and include new clauses that she should get paid a little bit more money, she should have better living conditions, and she should have warm clothes. Basic things, just warm clothes, because it's fucking London. So the case was dismissed, they left. And in order to not abide by those new recommendations from the court, they decided, let's just leave London and go hide somewhere in Manchester. So the display carried on. It was more and more popular. They made all the money. Sorry, that's my roommate, guys. So in 1814, Moro number 1, William Dunlop, finally, he died in 1814. And so she was left in the hands of Hendrik Caesar. And because of that, Hendrik Caesar, was like, he just wanted more money, all of them were just wanting more money. So he was like, okay, now that she's more famous, that the exhibition is even more famous, even other European countries, want in on the fun. They want to see her, so they want to, they want me to export her to other places. So he was like, the best thing to do is just sell her to another country and have her displayed there. So fortunately, that's what happens, and it really, like, her situation gets far worse. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but she was treated better with Dunlop than she did after he died. So that's how you know shit is gonna get really, really, really bad. So Hendrik decided to sell her to this Frenchman who was known for displaying animals. Like, his specialty was displaying exotic animals all over Europe. So of course you know where this is going. So he bought Sarah as one of the animals that he was going to display. He took her to Paris. His name was Roe. He was bought by Roe, and he took her to Paris. So as she got to Paris, she was taken to an animal display with other, like, real exotic animals from other parts of the world. So they put her in a cage again. This time she was completely naked, unlike before when she was at least half naked. This time she was completely stripped naked with just a small loincloth thingy in front of her lady bits. The rest of her, she was naked. She was literally placed next to a baby rhino. Like she had the same status as a rhino. So unfortunately, she had even worse treatment. She had a trainer who basically would order her to sit, to stand, to talk, to whatever, like an animal, like you would treat your pet. Completely dehumanized, even more than she was before. She was displayed like that for a few years. When you think it can't get worse, it can't get any more cruel and inhumane, it does. It really does. And it's just one of those stories. So after being displayed with the animals in Paris, one of the scientists in Paris also was there at the exhibit, and he saw her and saw the unique features that she had, and was like, oh my god, this would be an interesting science experiment. She would be an interesting specimen to study. This scientist was named Cuvier or Caviar. Cuvier. It's French, so I don't speak French. Cuvier. Let's say Cuvier. He was a naturalist or biologist, as we would know them. So he was very interested in studying this creature person, that he had never seen before. Why does she look like this? How? All of that. So she was very interested in there. And then Roe, decided to agree to send her to the scientist to be studied in a lab, and pricked and prodded, and Lord knows what else they would do. Like back then, scientists they had no ethics whatsoever. They just did whatever. So I don't even know what they did to her while she was there. So she was evaluated and studied by anatomists, physiologists, zoologists, because I guess she's an animal. Studied by all of these different scientists. And at the end of the studies, Cuvier, the original scientist, concluded in his research that apparently Sarah was, according to him, a link between animals and humans. So she wasn't human, and she also wasn't animal. She was sort of in between human and animal. So basically justifying that she could be treated as subhuman because she's not as human as the Europeans are. They concluded that about her, and carried on studying her. And then in 1816, when she was 26 years old, Sarah finally died at the age of 26, of course. They don't know the cause of her death. They say it could have been smallpox or pneumonia or even alcoholism. Like, when did she get the time to drink and all of that? We don't know. But yeah, she died in 1816. And just when you think, finally, this poor girl has lived a tough life, at least, now they can send her home, send her remains home, or at least bury her somewhere, let her be in peace. After struggling her whole life, let her finally have some peace now that she's gone. No, that's what you would think. That's not actually what happens, because it, like I said, when you think it can't get worse, it does. So after she died, instead of burying her and all that, Cuvier decides to take her remains and study them even further. Because she's dead now and she's no longer a living creature, you can now do whatever you want with her remains. So of course they took her remains, dissected, which means cutting up and looking at different organs and stuff. So yeah, they dissected her body, did whatever they wanted, studied whatever they wanted, and then at the end, Cuvier took parts of her body, put them in pickle jars, and sent them to a museum, the museum called Musée de l'Homme, I think so. I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah, it's a museum. He took her body parts there to be further displayed. And only in 1974 was when they decided to take down the display. But they kept her remains in France. The French government took over and kept them. And then fast forward 20 years after 1994, in 1994, South Africa, the apartheid government was defeated in South Africa finally by the African National Congress, and the new government led by President Mandela found out about the whole story of Sarah Baartman and what happened to her. So, President Mandela decided to tell the French government, please bring her home now. We demand her remains to be returned home. She cannot be a display anymore. Bring her home. So the French government was, they were like, technically she's a treasure for the French government, which means if we give her back to you, then we'll have to give back all the other treasures to all the other countries, and we don't want to do that. So it took them 8 years from the time that the president demanded that they return her to the time that she was actually returned back. It was like an 8-year period. So yeah, after 8 years, she was finally returned home in 2002 to her home of Eastern Cape, where she was buried. After more than 100 years since she died, she was finally buried there, finally given back her dignity, her humanity, and after just such a tragic life, she was finally returned home, and she was buried on the 9th of August here, which is a national holiday here in South Africa called Women's Day. So I found it kind of comforting, poetic, and just fitting that she was buried on a special day like Women's Day, because she was a remarkable young woman who weathered storms. She went through the absolute worst that humanity can ever give. Now she's resting in peace. These stories, it's not just this one story. These stories are so common in history. It's such a tragic story, but I'm glad that we could talk about these stories, we can tell these stories, and that then these people aren't forgotten in history. So that's the tragic story of Sarah Baartman. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Comment down below what you think of the story, how you felt about the story, and if you have any other interesting stories you would like me to talk about. So that's just a little bit of history. Next time, I'll probably do a true crime story from anywhere around the world, really. So look forward to that. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video. And
yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.